Let's jump in.
This is The Cross Section with Nate Lull and David Edelstein.
Featuring special guest, John Rathbun.
So I turned on my heat today again, by the way, because the weather can't make up its mind about whether it's spring or it's hearing us talk about fall so much that it's turning into fall.
Yeah, I've been outside all morning. We've been doing some live reporting, and not only is it freezing, the wind is blowing, and you know how that goes with live stuff. So it's been great.
What is the event that you're covering right now?
So actually, canoe racing is really big down in our neck of the woods, and all of the big-time races were canceled this year. But a small group got together, and they pretty much did a socially distanced sign up. So you could come today and sign up, and they had a canoe race. Normally we would be covering a canoe race called the General Clinton Canoe Regatta from Cooperstown to Bainbridge. So we thought, hey, we need to do this today to show those guys some love. So a much shorter race today, but doing our best to support them. It's Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. So where is it taking place? Which water?
You would actually know it very well. The start line is very close to Unitigo High School. So it's right there on that section of the Susquehanna River. And good turnout, but it was neat to see how they were doing it. You could come up, fill out your own paperwork, put your money in a box. You didn't really talk to anybody or have to exchange anything with anybody. I know maybe this was a little off the radar, I guess, but the media was there, so it wasn't. I guess it wasn't that hidden. So,
well, first of all, it's funny you say you don't have to talk to anyone, because isn't it? It's really physical distancing. It's not social distancing. You can still talk to people. Sound does not carry the virus.
Right. That's true.
You're like, you don't have to talk to anyone. This is like the perfect time for introverts, you know? Like, I don't need to talk. I'm just going to go and do my thing. That's funny. But no, I kid you not, when the whole sports world started changing, and really in turn the whole country and world seemed to change drastically when sports went down with the NBA and all that March week, mid-March, when everything was canceled, my first thoughts were, what am I going to cover sport-wise if I'm going to continue to cover sports? And I kid you not, some ideas that I brainstormed with some of my colleagues and that they had connections to, we were ready to jump on, were competitive bull riding, professional bull riding, and competitive fishing. So
there you go.
This canoe riding, this is something. We should have had a team and just been competing at this point.
Yeah.
Can people just show up and use this water? Is it set up like that, or do you have to get a permit?
No, it's the water is open anytime to anybody. Besides the race, you always see kayakers just going for a float, people on all sorts of different fishing boats and stuff like that. So yeah, the water is open, so you do not need a permit or anything. So.
No. Well, I know that you're itching to get back there. So
yeah,
we'll introduce our guest here today on the cross section. We have Section 3 Executive Director John Rathbun. And this past week has been, I'm sure we've all been following the New York State guidelines that have come out as far on Wednesday. The task force met for the first time. On Friday, they came out with their guidelines for how schools should proceed and could proceed with reopening when phase 4 comes around. The big news being that schools for high school athletics will be allowed to start up again only when their region of New York hits phase 4 and schools reopen with people in person going to school. So John Rathbun is going to be, I think, an interesting perspective on the executive leadership and communication and how you juggle all these ideas that are coming out all the time.
Yeah, very interesting to see what he's been going through. I'm excited to hear about that. I can't imagine that his job has been very easy over the last couple of months. So interested to see what he will say. And I know we got some good questions for him, because I've been so interested in how much feedback we've gotten from some of our social media posts and the show and everything about how passionate people are about the ideas that they have and hoping to see things go in different directions. So I know that John is probably hearing a lot of that and interested to see what he has to say.
And here's a good opportunity for us to plug that we are engaging with the people who are watching these shows. We appreciate the viewership over the past now 9 weeks. I can't believe it's been that long already, but you know, as these ideas come out, and we are here for those kind of discussions, and as we're all literally at home and just looking for sports to talk about and stay up to date on, keep sharing those ideas, share them with Nate and I on Twitter. You can see them probably right below us right now, at Nate Lull and at David Z. Edelstein on Twitter, so that we can hear your ideas and bring them up. And I know that we should, let's jump into this and actually ask John some of the things that we've been thinking, and also some of the ideas I'd love to bring up that we've been hearing. Welcome, Section 3 Executive Director John Rathbun. Can you give a little bit of a background just on how you got involved in being the Section Executive Director and what your responsibilities are?
Great question. No, I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question. So, and I always tell everybody, I'm not from the educational field. I don't have an educational background because anybody who had this position before me was always like a retired athletic director. So I have a more of a sports marketing background. I used to work with the Syracuse Chamber of Commerce, and I used to go around the country and try to sell the Syracuse and Onondaga County as a destination. So I used to work with a lot of the national governing bodies, a lot of the Olympic sports, you know, trying to have them bring their sporting events to Syracuse or Onondaga County. So I probably did that for 13, 14 years, but the travel just got to me after a while. And at the time, Section 3 only had a part-time executive director, and they wanted to go to a full-time position. So they had contacted me and asked me if I'd be interested. And it was perfect timing because I just sort of got sick of the travel. You know, it's not like I didn't go to great places and meet some really neat people. It's just, you know, it's a drag, you know, just a drag that just, you're constantly in and out of airports and in and out of hotels. And I was out in Omaha, Nebraska one time on a Wednesday night. It was like 9:30. I had to go to another reception. I'm like, I just want to be home on my couch. So this job came along. I went in for an interview, and everything worked out well. And I've been here ever since. I'm just starting my 13th year now with Section 3.
What's the experience been like recently? I'm guessing in those 13 years, you've never experienced anything like this, or even had a canceled season like we just had with spring. So what's the experience been like from your perspective as the executive director of an entire section?
So the one thing that I like about my job is that there's no 2 days that are ever alike. And trust me, since like March 5th, no 2 days have been ever alike. And it's challenging, and you try to stay positive because, you know, we have an awful lot of volunteers, we have an awful lot of coaches, athletic directors that we deal with on a daily basis, and you're, you know, trying to keep them in positive, and that, you know, this, we'll get by this and things will work out well. But so it's been challenging. I pray that we never have to go through another season we did for this past spring. My heart bleeds for these high school kids that couldn't compete, they couldn't represent their school, couldn't represent their community. You know, and if you think about it, you only have so many opportunities to play that sport, and you take a whole season away for something that really you can't control. Has been very, very tough. So the only thing I can't even compare it to anything, but I know, like, we've had snowstorms before. You couldn't compete for 4 or 5 days, but that's not even close to anything like this. So hopefully, you know, we can use this as a learning experience. I think our teenagers have been great. They've tried to stay real positive. Yeah, I pray that we can get by this and get back to some sort of normal life. But who knows what that normal life is going to be.
John, as I was thinking about what I wanted to ask you today, I kept coming back to this question. I said, well, I don't really know if it's a very professional question or not, but I keep coming back to, are you tired of talking about this? I mean, you've constantly been bombarded with questions and all the time from schools and families and parents and media. Like, how has that been for you?
So, and I probably get 10 phone calls a day and another 15 emails wanting to know if there's any kind of update. And I wake up every morning. I watch the news just like everybody else. I don't have a secret line into the governor's office, or I don't have a secret line into President Trump. But I'm just trying to tell people, we're trying to come with a backup plan one way or another. Whether we have full sports in the fall, whether we have partial sports in the fall, whether it's a delayed season, we're trying to keep a list of some suggestions. So we've got some sort of planning. And that's what Ben and I both do. We plan for a year out, 2 years out, and so we've got our year already planned for this coming year. But we just don't know if we're going to have sports. We don't know, what the school day is going to look like. So we're trying to make some plans the best we can. Hopefully, this will all clear up by the middle of August, so we can start the fall season August 24th. But if not, if we have to delay for a few weeks, what I saw, I think the governor last week said different parts of the states, the school year may open up different times. And so maybe we do things like that just within our own section. Maybe we do things just like a regular season with no travel outside your section or outside your region. And maybe we just do like sectional play and not do a state championship, or because if you think about it, like the boys soccer championship is down in Middletown, and that's not far from New York City. And do we want to send our schools down there to play somebody from Section 11, which is the Long Island area? And I'm not really so much worried about the 14, 15, 16-year-old kids as much as I'm worried about the adults that come along with it, the coaches, the officials. That's where really my concern is. I think we can make changes to different types of activities to keep it safe, especially like shared equipment or handshakes and social distancing. I think we can make adjustments there, but I think the things that we can control are, the concession stands, people sitting next to each other in the stands, the bathroom area. So I think that's really going to be challenging for us moving forward. So we're trying to make some plans like that, but it's all up in the air right now, to be honest with you.
Speaking of the different regions at different times, obviously, one of the things that Rob Zayas, the executive director of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association, mentioned frequently this week is that schools might be opening at different times, which then is directly related to the athletic programs being able to start again at different times.
Right.
That leaves the question for me of looking at Section 3 as just one example of the counties involved in Section 3, Oneida, Herkimer, Onondaga. They're in different regions of the New York Forward Plan. So right now it hasn't been the case, but if it were to be the case come the fall where Onondaga County in central New York is at a different phase of the game than Oneida and Herkimer are for the other half of Section 3, how do you foresee handling that and the potential implications of a sectional playoff?
So that's going to be a challenge. Actually, within Section 3, we have 13 different counties, and we deal with 11 different BOCES. So we are actually the largest landmass section in New York State. So we go all the way up to the Thousand Islands. We go down in Cortland. We're out in Little Falls, Dowsville, and then we're out west. We're out Auburn, Cato, Meridian. So we cover a large piece of central and northern New York. So that is a challenge. But if we have to tweak it in where we just say you're going to play within your league for 6 weeks or 7 weeks, and there's no travel outside your own league, and that's not the greatest thing in the world. But you know what? It's better than what we did this past spring. And I think if you talk to any kid who would have played spring sports, they would have taken that in a heartbeat as opposed to not playing at all. So I think we need to be a little bit flexible. And right now, and a lot of the people that I talk to, I don't think that there's a bad idea moving forward. But I think it's good that we're having these discussions and trying to come up with something creative so we can get those students back out on the playing fields this fall.
John, with everything that was talked about this week with the task force and everything that they came out with, I thought it was great that they're at least giving schools the opportunity to kind of make their own decisions. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how that all came together. If you got to have a lot of input on everything that came out. And I wanted to say kudos, honestly, to the state for really laying out some very clear guidelines for what schools and coaches and athletic directors can do going forward.
Yeah, and actually, I've seen a lot of different guidelines from a lot of different national governing bodies. The New York State Parks and Recreation Society just came out with some guidelines for sport camps. I think that's really good. So what's really good about the state task force is that they've got people from all over the state. They've got professions that are being covered. You know, they've got nurses, they've got medical people, they've got the governor's office, they've got SED. You know, they have superintendents, principals, athletic directors, coaches, all involved. And so I think everybody has a little bit different perspective. So, you know, I'll give Robert an awful lot of credit for, you know, putting that group together. Our Section 3 representative is a high school principal, and we've had a number of discussions with him on things that, you know, could possibly work within Section 3. So I think, you know, he went to that meeting with his tool chest filled and, you know, we're ready to have some good discussions. So, you know, that was just their first meeting. I think they're meeting again on the 24th. I think that's when they're meeting again. So, you know, it's working out well. But I think ultimately, you know, we're going to have to wait to find out what the governor is going to let schools do come September 1st or August 1st or whatever. But I'm a little concerned that, you know, a lot of the students haven't been in gym class or really haven't worked out since probably early March. And a lot of those fall sports, you just can't go out and put a football helmet on and start playing. You know, there's a lot of the sports that do a lot of activities in the summertime. And I think most schools won't be open in the summertime for weightlifting, for any kind of workouts, either, you know, with a coach or individually. So I'm a little concerned, and it might be a good idea to delay the start of games in September. You know, right now you only need 6 practices in most sports before you can represent your school. So it might be a good idea to maybe extend that to 10 or 15, so that way we can get some conditioning, some workouts before the season actually starts. I would hate to throw some kids out there and all of a sudden we're dealing with pulled hamstrings or pulled muscles, and I think there'll be a lot of we've never seen before if you just throw them right out in the field and start, you know, playing soccer or playing football. You know, most of the time in football they do the 7-on-7 camps. You know, they go to a team camp, they do clinics, and they probably start, you know, June 1st with the evening lifts and stuff like that. And so all that's, you know, is off the table right now. So I'm a little concerned about that. But I think, you know, with this task force that Mr. Zayas has been putting together, you know, hopefully we're going to have some good guidelines and some good suggestions so we don't have those nagging injuries right off the bat. You know, if you look at like what Major League Baseball is doing or the NBA, you know, they've got 3 or 4 weeks of a spring training plan before they even start playing some games. And so I think we can learn an awful lot, you know, moving forward from what the professional sports are doing. I know it's a completely different thing, but still, you know, you have to have that pre-season training, especially if these kids haven't been doing anything since March. So I'm a little concerned about them.
That brings up 2 questions in my mind. One, which is, so we just entered phase 3 in the Mohawk Valley and Central New York also, if I'm not mistaken. So that means that if all goes according to plan, and again, things change on an hourly basis recently, but if all things go to plan, phase 4 could be starting June 26th in 2 weeks. And the guidelines that were released yesterday by the state's task force were about how schools can manage those on-school campus workouts once phase 4 begins. So as soon as the end of this month, they could be taking advantage of those. Are you saying that my first question is, do you think that those schools won't be immediately jumping into that and having these groups back in session? And the second thing is, if you're talking about a potential delay of the start of the season because of the safety concerns and adding more practices before an actual game scenario, would the end of the season also be pushed farther down toward the line, or would the season just be shorter?
So I think the first part about the workouts, I know the superintendents have been meeting almost every other day, and I haven't been involved in any of those meetings, but I think they've got their own strategy and how they want to open up their facilities. Because, you know, a lot of the communities that we deal with, there's community groups that use the school's facilities during the summertime for like Little League or camps or whatever like that. And I know a lot of them have already been canceled. You can say we'll open up, July 1st, but you've already canceled the Little League season, or you've canceled camps, so it's hard to get them going right now. So it'll be interesting to see on when they start letting outside groups use the school facilities. The second part of your question is that, I think that if we had to shorten the season, I think people would be upset at first, but it's better than not having the spring season like we've had this past year. So instead of playing 16 soccer games, if we only can play 10, I think people will take that. So, beggars can't be choosers, and if that's the best we can do, we can do that.
What are your thoughts on the NFHS guidelines? The NFHS guidelines split into those 3 phases of reopening. So once we hit New York phase 4, schools can start with phase 1 of the NFHS guidelines. And, sports like football and soccer have been labeled as the more contact sports, the higher risk. And there are pretty strict guidelines in at least phase 1 and of those NFHS guidelines of, the size of groups that can participate, how locker rooms can't be used, sanitation, water bottle, equipment can't be shared, a ball can't be passed to another person. In your mind, how do those guidelines live up to what they should be?
Yeah, when I read through that, there was a couple things that jumped out at me, and the first one is that those guidelines are for everybody across the United States. And if you've just seen where this pandemic is on, there's parts of the country that opened up a lot quicker than other parts of the country. So it's tough to have like a generic plan that fits everybody's situation to this virus. And so maybe if somebody, could have been playing baseball in June, where somebody in New York City, you're not going to think about playing a sport until probably October 1st or whatever. So it's nice that they had guidelines to go by. The other one that really jumped out at me, I think like when schools rent a facility, so if a school district rents an ice rink, and what has to be cleaned, before the students could actually get there, well, the schools really can control that. So they're going to show up at 4 o'clock for practice, whatever, assuming that that's been cleaned. And how do you really double check that? So, there's a lot of little things that I'm like, I think these are good ideas, but realistically, can that really happen? Can it not happen? I'm not quite sure. And I mean, I just can't see an athletic director jumping in his car, going over to the ice rink at 3 o'clock to make sure that it's been sanitized for that day. So there's a lot of little things that, in the sport of soccer, you'd be surprised, it's a sport that's played with your foot, how many people actually touch that soccer ball. And I know the goalies wear a glove, but you've got ball boys, you've got officials that touch that ball, other players touch that ball. And so, there's things that we can do during dead balls to, keep that clean, whatever. But, just by the pure nature of some of these sports, that you're going to have contact, with some kind of shared equipment. And in almost every sport, you've got shared equipment. In track and field, you've got people raking the sand pits. And, you've got the baton that they pass from runner to runner. So golf, the pin, you have to take out. So tennis, how are you going to play tennis so that only one person touches the ball? I don't see how you can really do that. So I think we're going to have to get it, but I think sooner or later we're just going to have to make a decision, say let's go for it, let's not go for it until this all clears up. But I'm in the mindset right now is like let's go for it and adjust as we're moving along. But have a plan and let's see how it goes.
That leads right into maybe my biggest question that I wanted to get your thoughts on. As I've been reporting about these guidelines that have come out this week and my conversations on Tuesday and Wednesday with Rob Zayas, I spoke with a bunch of coaches from across Section 3 and Section 4, some superintendents and some athletic directors, because those were some of the categories that filled out the survey that had been sent out and that nearly 6,000 people responded to, that was informing the task force of the general consensus of where people were ranking importance of things as fall sports come back. what I found was there seemed to be two majority lines of thought. Almost everyone seems to agree that sports should only come back at the high school level when the schools reopen in phase 4. So that's out of the way. The state decided that. Everyone seems to be in agreement, almost everyone, that that's the most important thing. But what diverged from there, I found was interesting. Either people saw the precautions that were being taken as reasons to be super cautious and say, I don't think if we change the soccer ball situation where we can't have throw-ins and, you know, we have contact, it's in the sport, or football, some people were saying with precautions that we have to take, doesn't look like we're going to be able to play. The other line of thought was with these precautions, we are going to be able to play because they're going to be the safety measures that we need. And so it was this interesting two lines of thought that stemmed from the same idea of we're taking these precautions, but how do those precautions actually play out? Do we play and because they're going to allow us to be safe, or do we not play because the precautions are just changing things too much and it's just too risky? Where do you fall in between those two lines?
So the frustrating part, and it was almost like the first question of this interview, we just don't know. Nobody really knows the effect of this disease and on participation, on really on anything. And I wish I had that crystal ball to say, you know what, we can do this, and we don't have to worry about playing soccer, playing field hockey, you know, or you know what, because of the nature of that sport, there's no way that we could play those sports until there's a vaccine. We just really don't know. So I wish I had the answer, Dave, but I really, really don't. I think it's good that people have an opinion one way or another, but I think it's almost going to have to be trial and error. We're going to have to throw it out there and see where it follows, and hopefully no one gets sick, and you know, and we can play the sports. So I know everybody wants to get back into after school activities, and you know, and that's a huge part of the school district. It's a huge part of a student's day, the after school activities, you know, not only sports, but band and plays and debate teams. I mean, students like doing that kind of stuff, and that all adds up to the, you know, the round education that they get within our school district. So we need that, and I think it's a huge part of the educational environment that we have. So we all want to do it, but we want to do it safe. And I don't think anybody wants to put a child or a coach into an unsafe atmosphere. But you know, sooner or later, we're just going to have to, you know, jump off that bridge and go for it.
John, one thing that we keep hearing, David and I keep hearing from some of our followers as we put the show out each week is people have been very curious about the whole idea of switching seasons, of having maybe more friendly sports, quote unquote, like baseball or softball in the fall. Was that ever really a serious discussion, or was it kind of just out there in the rumor mill? I definitely wanted to ask you about that.
So I sort of like that idea, and I've been talking about that probably for 4 or 5 weeks right now, only because the spring sports, you know, that's more of an outdoor with a lot less contact. You know, the softball, the baseball, the track and field, the golf, the tennis. You know, you could play that in the fall, but that doesn't really necessarily mean it's not going to be a safety risk. But I think there's going to be a lot less contact in those sports. I would hate to see if we made that switch, then all of a sudden 2 weeks into the season we had to stop and end it, and now really those kids have gone 2 years without playing baseball because now we've already focused football in for the spring. I think change is tough on a lot of people, and you know, that's a good idea. I mean, I would rather do that than not do anything at all. If we could have those sports as opposed to not having any sports, I'd sign up for that in a heartbeat. But I would just really hate to see if we had that and then we had to close that season out, and then those kids who do lacrosse or track and field, then they're really 2 years without playing that sport. So I don't know as far as the people in Albany how much they support that idea, but I don't think it's that bad of an idea. I mean, but like I said, I don't think there's really a bad idea right now.
Knowing how the system works as an executive director, knowing what it takes to make decisions and set deadlines and things, when do you think that the cutoff would be for making a decision about whether sports seasons should be flipped? When would that have to be known by so that you can effectively plan to make it happen?
Well, the next time that the state committee is getting together, this is the state central committee, where they would have the ability to make a decision like that. It's at the end of July. So I don't know if that's enough time to make that change. I think the spring sports, would be a little bit easier to move to the fall, as opposed to like if we played football in the spring, then move that to the fall. So it would have to be at the central committee meeting, which is end of July up in Lake Placid that we're supposed to be meeting right now. That's when they would probably have that vote, if that was the direction that everybody wanted to go.
What is it like, again, as an executive director in your position, to handle all of these ideas that people are probably asking you about or throwing at you, whether it's from media people like Nate and I trying to just throw ideas out and see what you say, or even just fans and parents and students who are curious about which direction things could go? What's it like to balance and juggle those thoughts?
So what I'm doing is that I've got my own running list of different ideas that people have called me or people have emailed me or text me. And so I'm just keeping this list going. And then, so when the day comes, we can actually sit down and say, okay, what is the fall season going to look like? And I'll say, I've got these 35 ideas. Let's look at 12 of these 35 ideas to incorporate so we can play field hockey this fall, or so we can run cross country or whatever else. So, I don't think there's a bad idea right now, Dave, but I think, we just need to be prepared for good and or bad. But we want to play, and I can't emphasize that enough, that everybody wants to get out on that field and play this fall, and the students want to do it, and the coaches want to do it, and the parents want to come and watch their kids compete.
John, I guess one of my last questions is, I kind of heard through the rumor mill, you hear all sorts of stuff, and some people were asking me, I've already heard this school said they don't want to play fall sports, or that school doesn't want to play fall sports. Are you getting a sense with all the districts in Section 3 on kind of a vibe of what schools are thinking about? Or again, is it way too early to even be thinking about that?
Yeah, Nate, I haven't heard that one yet. I think I heard a superintendent a long time ago talk about, students eating lunch in their classroom, and there's no assembly. There won't be any field trips. There won't be any after-school activities. But that was probably mid-May, when they first canceled the rest of the school year. So I think we're all learning right now. I think I saw online the other day that there's a school out in Ohio that's going to go to 100% come September 1st. They're going to give that a shot. So no one has really said, we're not going to be doing this. I think the other concern that's going to affect school districts this year is the lack of state aid, and how that's going to affect their school budget, their athletic budget, and any kind of tweaks that they would have to make because of the state aid. So I think that's almost a situation where we faced back in 2008, 2009 when we went through that recession, and they cut modified sports, so they cut travel outside their own league. Or no schools could do any scrimmages. They were doing everything they can to save $100 or $200 there or whatever. So I think, that's going to be prices come this fall too. It's just, whatever that funding, lack of funding that's coming down from the state. And I've heard everything from 15 to 25%. So that's really going to be part of the equation too. But, the bottom line is the safety part of it too. And so if there's a school district out there that says, there's no way we can do this to keep our students safe, then support them 100%. I wouldn't question it. It's the same thing, Nate, with thunder and lightning. Once you hear that thunder and lightning, we stop, and we end the program till it's safe again. Nobody wants to put a child in an unsafe environment, and we don't do it.
Speaking of the financial impact, I was going to ask about that. I'll bring it now to the other side of it too, which is if, as far as insurance is concerned, are you in touch with any schools, or do you have any role that you play in knowing how insurance payments might be affected? I've asked some superintendents about this, and some of them said it doesn't affect them because they pay a single rate. Some of them say they haven't even thought about it, or some say it might affect 21-22 season more, but that they just thinking of the balancing of one, if there's a shorter season, maybe they would pay less in money because they don't need to cover as many activities, but there's a virus and everything, and there's more risk for the injuries, like you mentioned, for not having practiced in a while and getting back into shape. Does that increase costs?
Well, and we use the same insurance company that a lot of the school districts use, and we haven't really had any kind of communication with them that they've had concern one way or another. So, we still have our coverage and our policies. We're protected regardless of whatever happens. So I haven't had that discussion, Dave, to be honest with you. So they haven't notified me that they have any concerns moving forward. So I think the other thing that is concerning for me is that we rent out a lot of college facilities for sectional play, for regional play, and or community facilities. It'll be interesting to see if those colleges, depending on what their campus looks like, whether they'll allow any outside groups. So like if Ithaca College isn't going to have kids until October 1st, will they let outside groups use Ithaca College for end of August or end of October? I don't know that. We use Utica College for the indoor track facility. They may not want 38 different school districts showing up on a Friday night, bringing 300-400 kids on their campus. So I hope that's not true, but I'm a little concerned that that's a possibility that we're gonna have to deal with. So we're gonna need a good backup plan if we can't use some of the colleges or community venues for league play or for sectional play.
And I know that some schools even practice at colleges like Herkimer College. I've seen some schools use the turf there, and there was a sectional game also at that facility. So that definitely, I can imagine, will take a lot of coordination. I imagine that, and I don't even need to imagine anymore because I've heard so many people say this, but going hour to hour with all these changes is exhausting and tiring and confusing, and there's so much that's unknown. And I know you just expressed that sentiment, and I know that a lot of the student athletes I'm talking with and their families are expressing that too. I want to give you the opportunity here to talk to them kind of directly. What message do you have for these families as you go through this process of the unknown?
So especially what I tell the seniors all the time, I mean, we're out there pitching for those seniors every day. I mean, we want after school activities. We're doing everything we can to provide after school activities and through sports. So we're working for them. We're doing everything we possibly can to make sure that we do have sports come this fall. So I just want them to know that we're in their corner, and we want them to get back on the plane this fall.
Awesome. As I see that our recording time is winding down, Nate, do you have another question before I just end with one?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for all the work you're doing. I don't think the section executive directors are really getting enough credit for everything they do and the long hours and all the questions that you guys are answering. So thank you for joining us and for all the work you're doing right now fighting for student athletes. I know they all appreciate it.
Yeah, and actually, guys, thank you for everything that you guys do too. Your jobs are really thankless. A lot of times an event might end at 10 o'clock at night. You guys are sitting there for another 45 minutes to an hour doing your stories. So you're getting home at midnight or 1 o'clock on a snowy February night. So I appreciate all the support you guys do for our high schools and our student athletes. So thank you for everything you do.
And you know what? I can't wait to get back to that. I can't wait. Never before have I missed being there so late. All the stress of running to all the games and getting back in time. I've never missed it so much. So thank you, John, for joining us. We really appreciate that. I'm sure everyone will appreciate your perspective.
All right. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.